This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Clean Cause. Grab a Clean Cause organic sparkling yerba mate and get your day going with 160 milligrams of caffeine that won't cause crashes or jitters or make you feel weird like coffee, some of the other energy drinks might do. Clean Cause is low in calories, it's low in sugar, it comes in 5 great flavors. But here's the best part. Every sip makes a difference in the fight against addiction. Clean Cause donates. Check this out. I know I said this every podcast, but it's still unbelievable to me. They donate not 5%, not 10%, not 20%. They donate 50% of net profits to support individuals in recovery from drug and alcohol addiction. So every time you buy a Clean Cause or a case, you order their monthly subscription that gets shipped right out to you. Half of those net profits go to support somebody who's looking for help from alcoholism or addiction. So it's just an awesome cause. Here's what you can do. You can head on over to cleancause.com and you can get 20% off your order today with promo code SOBERGUY. That's cleancause.com. Enter the promo code SOBERGUY at checkout and you will save 20%.
That Sober Guy podcast contains adult content, merciless truth, and emotional nudity. Listener discretion is advised.
I'm Shane Ramey. You're listening to That Sober Guy podcast, and we help people stay sober. If it's your first time listening, welcome. I'm so glad that you're here today. You can find more podcasts, more resources. You can also contact us by going to thatsoberguy.com. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at That Sober Guy Podcast. All the links from today's episode will be in the show notes, so they're easy for you to find. I'm so excited to have our guest back on the show today, man. He was an early guest back on episode 168. So, man, quite a while ago. And he's got a hell of a story that we're going to talk about today. It's one way to put it, I guess. The focus today, for those of you out there, and I hear from many of you who struggle with relapse in and out or back and forth, or maybe you put some time together and then all of a sudden something happened and it kind of fell apart. And John today, John Mabry, is just, he's our guest obviously, but he's got just a great story to share today. And we're not going to waste any time. I want to jump right in with him. John, like I mentioned, episode 168, it's been a while, but a lot has happened since then. And really excited today to have you back on the podcast, man. How are you?
Hey, great. So much, such an honor to be back here. Thanks so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
Yeah. When you originally reached out, because we haven't talked in a while, and I go, wait, I know John. Like, wait a minute. It kind of took me a second. I went back and I looked. I said, yeah, that is John. And so, like I mentioned to those out there listening, I'll link the previous podcast if you want to go back and listen to the first one and then follow up on this one. But quite a bit has happened in between then. Maybe, John, let's just start. Give us a quick rundown of your background, and then just tell us a little bit about yourself so folks out there can get to know you.
Yeah, so my name's John Mabry, grateful recovering alcoholic addict. I am saved by the grace of God. It's the only reason I'm sober today. And so it has been a wild ride. I'm going to breeze through some of the early stuff just so that people can go back to the first podcast. But let's just go through it. So I was born and raised in Texas, had a great childhood, great family support system growing up. However, later in life, after some traumas happened, I realized I had childhood trauma. I had ear surgeries as a kid. And when I had these other traumas as an adult, this trauma therapist goes, I don't care what happened to you later in life. I care what happened to you as a kid. And I was like, I didn't even tell anything about my childhood. But she goes, something set the tone early on for how you reacted later on in life. And what it was these ear surgeries. A transplanted eardrum, 3 prosthetic bones, my left ear. So I felt defective and broken and insecure, and I'm not good enough, and I'm unworthy as a child. But I'm managed by being the class clown. Most senior year in prom, in high school, I was named class clown, most outgoing, most school spirited, and best personality. And it was all just a cover up for how insecure I felt underneath, Wow. Once I went to college, college was manageable, communications major at Baylor University in Waco, Texas, go Baylor Bears, and had a great experience there. Senior year was amazing in some cases and completely tragic in others. So senior year, I was working as a videographer for the football team. So I got the same scholarship the football players got for doing video work as a communications major. I was dating a cheerleader who was our fraternity sweetheart. I was social chairman of my fraternity, all over campus, all over the place, making some money, doing well. and a tire blew out in a friend's car. We were coming back from a spring break trip out of New Orleans back to Waco, and I'd set up this big cruise for like 35 of us. We went and had this amazing time. We're on our way back. No drinking or driving, just a freak deal. Tire blows out in a friend's car. We roll witness reports, say between 8 and 10 times across I-45 outside of Houston, Texas, in a small town, Centerville. We roll across the median, across the other side of the interstate, missing oncoming traffic as we were rolling, and landed in a field. My legs got crushed. I'll just kind of breeze through the story. My legs got crushed. They had a helicopter come land on the side of the interstate after shutting the interstate down. Traffic stopped on both sides. And we took my friend Ashley off in the helicopter, and she passed away before they got her to the hospital. So we had that happen. I had 14 procedures that next year on my right leg. Ended up amputating my leg below the knee. If anybody's watching the video, here's my prosthetic leg that I'm fortunate to have access to.
Yeah.
So I hit the ground running. I wanted to go show everybody I was fine. This whole my whole mentality, the whole family kind of structure I grew up in was, accomplish, achieve, do the things you're supposed to do, and everything's going to be okay. And so I just went out to conquer the world. I got a master's in counseling at San Diego State. I moved from Texas. Everything I knew back there, I said, I'm going to go help other people. I'm going to take this experience, help other people, because people help me. So good intentions. But I moved out to San Diego. I'm completely, isolated from everything I knew back home, disconnected from all my friends and family. And I got access to the painkillers and the alcohol. And I don't share this I don't share this majority of the time I talk, but I'll share it here. I just feel called to do so. I had a large settlement as a result of my car accident. So I had some money as well as I graduated college. And you send somebody out who's addicted to painkillers and alcohol and Adderall, marijuana. I send them out into the real world, just graduating college with a newly amputated leg, trauma from an accident.
Yeah.
Usually there's a good chance something's not going to pan out right.
Especially in San Diego too, man. That's the spot to be. I mean, in sense,
exactly.
Right? Yeah.
Dude, I had a condo on the beach. I had a condo on Mission Bay across the street from the beach.
Man.
I mean, going to grad school. I'd gotten married from somebody I knew at Baylor. She moves out and graduate grad school, addicted to various prescription pills and alcohol, and stumbled into some acting and stunt work in LA. So if you're about to tune out, tune in. This is crazy. I've been on the movie Superbad with Jonah, got a scene in Superbad with Jonah Hill. Worked on NCIS and ER, a number of projects using my amputated leg to get some work. And I was like, hey, I'm going to get my foot in the door in the industry, found there was a niche, and kind of rode that out for a while. Worked on, but a number of other projects. Been backstage at the ESPYs with The Rock and Oprah. I've been at the Playboy Mansion with Adam Sandler and Emma Stone and Bruce Willis and all these people. So I've been licked in a cab by Andy Dick. I've been bowling at Phil Jackson's house, 10-time NBA, championship coach. I've been bowling at his house, just crazy stuff, but all feeding my addiction and my ego. But yet underneath all that, I was completely insecure.
Can I ask you something too? I don't mean to interrupt you, man, but I just, so all that stuff you just said it's really cool, right? Like those are like experiences and, a time in your life where you met some cool people and you hung out. I just feel like we're so wrapped in like media culture and fame and fortune and all that stuff. And I think I know the answer to this already, but I just want to ask you anyways, like all that stuff, did it fill any void in your heart at that time, in your soul? Did it fill it up? Maybe temporarily, but what was the outcome of that? Maybe you could speak to that a little bit.
It did. And it's for me, celebrityism is like a big deal. Cause like my grandfather was a famous Baptist preacher. He came up with Billy Graham. He came up at the same time as Billy Graham in Minnesota. So he was looked at as kind of a pinnacle in his community. And anytime we went anywhere in town with my grandpa, it was, hey, hey, doctor, how are you? And so we had this kind of put grandpa up on this pedestal. And so I did that my entire life. Anybody that was had any message or anything, I put them up on this pedestal. So for me to dive into Hollywood and dive into all these people like Adam Sandler, heck yeah, I want to hang out with them. It absolutely filled the insecurity that I had myself, that I could be somebody if I was next to somebody.
Yeah.
I could feel at ease. Yeah. I could feel better about myself if I associated with certain people.
But in that time it worked. Last. But I guess what I was getting at is ultimately in the long term, all that stuff is irrelevant, right? That's kind of
absolutely.
Okay. That's kind of what I was getting at. Like,
yes, I have so much more healthy bonds and friendships and recovery, right? I mean, this is the stuff I was really looking for, was love and compassion and holding me accountable and people following up with me. And that's what I get in recovery that you're never going to find out there ever. Totally. Never going to find that out there. Yeah.
Yeah, good, man. Sorry. So I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I just love that, because I just feel like, we as human beings, and just being on this crazy, weird planet we're on, and, those of us on a more spiritual journey, trying to take that path, we find these things that we think are going to fulfill us, whether it's alcohol, drugs, fame, hanging out with famous people, whatever it is. And ultimately, at the end of the day, it's all really meaningless, and that doesn't really do the job for the long term. So I just, I thank you for sharing that a little bit. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I can attest to the being out in LA and it not filling the wrong void, filling the void in unhealthy ways.
It's a weird place.
So, yeah. So what's crazy is a couple weeks after this Playboy Mansion experience, got a call. My brother didn't show up for work one day. My brother was my best friend, my only sibling, and he struggled with mental health and substance use issues. We didn't get him any help. Our family, we just didn't want to talk about it. He's a smart guy. And I go over to his house in Beverly Hills. He was renting a room in a house. And so I go knock on his door, and it was locked, and called his cell phone, and it rang on the other side of the door. I could hear it, and no answer. So kicked in the door with my prosthetic leg, kicked from one trauma right into another one, that like wood splintering out across the room. And my brother had been dead for 3 days. In the shadows in the shadows of the hills in Beverly Hills, and lonely and isolated. And we never encouraged him to get the help that he needed, because we didn't want to talk about it. And so that's why I share my story. That's what my motivation and getting out, sharing my story is about, is saving somebody like my brother who didn't have a chance because we didn't want to talk about it. So telling families it's okay to talk about it. If somebody has diabetes, heart disease, cancer, these are chronic diseases left untreated, can lead to death. Same thing with addiction. So brother passed. That sucked. I'll spare all the details there. We got out of LA, moved here to Nashville. I've been here 14 years. Nice. Brought me with me, and struggled with holding down jobs. Next thing you know, Dave Ramsey's a radio guy, get people out of debt, total money makeover, great Christian guy, Christian organization. I got in there, and with less than a year, got called into his office and got fired as a result of my substance use on the job. And so that when I finally raised my hand, went to treatment for the first time in 2011, ended up in 5 rehabs in 7 years. Did a lot of work, did a lot of trauma work, some brain mapping, all kinds of stuff, done all kinds of different things. But I just kept coming back to my ego. My ego kept getting in the way. I still thought I was better than other people. I still thought I had a leg up on other people because I had some better experiences. I'm just felt like I was better than other people. And God just kept taking things away from me. All right, I'm going to take away your I'm going to take away your leg. I'm going to take away your brother. I'm going to take away your job. Then I go to these rehab centers, and I end up having a good 2-3 years sober. And last time you and I interviewed, I was working for a group of addiction treatment centers, going around the country, sharing my story at colleges, universities. And here goes my ego. My ego is going back up. And the message was about me. Really, my intent behind the message was to drive people to treatment. Yes. But there was this piece of me that was like, look at me, look what I've done. And I started having some success. I was hosting a podcast. I was on great podcasts like yours, traveling the country, and God's like, I'm going to take that away too. You're not ready for that either. Dang. So he removed the job, and I didn't get fired from this job. So that was for my substance use. So that was good. However, it led to a relapse and led to a divorce. Lost my wife, my house, my kids, and COVID hits. And I was alone for the first time in my life. I put on 55 pounds, like seemingly overnight, was more depressed I'd ever been in my life. And I was doing so well, and I fell so far, so fast. And it all started with one phone call. Guys, if you're struggling, just pick up that, 1,000-pound phone and make one phone call. And I made one phone call to one friend. He comes over and it's like, dude, you don't look well. He was like, what are 2 things you can do today? What are just 2 things you can do? And we made a little list of just 2 simple little tasks I could do, and started with that. And so I started getting back into the gym, slowly getting back into things. And I ended up, something wasn't working. Something wasn't working why I kept relapsing. And so I said, what else can I change? And so I went to Celebrate Recovery. Nice. So, it doesn't matter how you get sober, just keep trying. I've tried. I've met with gurus in Bali. I have flown to Bali to meet with gurus. They call them Pac-Mans. I've sat in huts with Pac-Men to like figure out what the heck's going on with me. And I've traveled the world to try to find these answers. Yeah. And it all comes back to get back for me back into the church where I grew up in. And I kept trying to make AA work, and for millions of people it works. And I still go to AA meetings. I still take an AA meeting a couple times a month to a treatment center, and I listen to online AA meetings several times a week. So it's still a part of my program. But Celebrate Recovery, for those of you who don't know, is a Christ-centered 12-step group that helps with any hurt, habit, or hang up. So it's not alcohol or narcotic specific, but it could be shopping. It could be binge watching Netflix. It could be overspending, overeating. So any hurt, habit, or hang up, this Christian organization is like a 12-step group. But here's the kicker, is they have normal meetings like AA meetings and breakout share groups once a week. But it's when I got involved in a men's step study. Yeah. And the men's step study is a year-long program that you commit to. It's about a year. And you meet every week for 2 hours with a group of men. And that's where the healing is. It's like this consistent work. So you're in AA, you work the 12 steps with a sponsor one-on-one. Here you're working the 12 steps with a group. And so I've got 9 other guys in this group where they are hearing all my crap. And I'm hearing a guy sharing something really personal about infidelity maybe he had or something like that. I'm like, man, that guy's being bold and sharing that. Well, I need to share this. So it was more accountability, more support. By the time we got done with that group, it was like going through spiritual battle together. You know, it's like, these are my brothers. I know all the crap him and his family have been through because of his stuff. He knows all my stuff. I can pick up the phone, call any of them. And I had to move twice in 3 months last year. And these are the guys that showed up to move me twice in 3 months with their trucks.
That's awesome.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's been kind of the arc of my journey.
I relate today, to you on that 9 month, I think ours was like nine month step study. My wife and I did it simultaneously, but she did the women's side, obviously, and I did the men's side, but we went on the same night. I think it was back in 2018. So our kids were a little younger, and I just dropping them off every week, you know, at my mom's or wherever, and then hitting it. And it was a lot of work, you know. I'm sure you can relate to that. It's like a lot of work, but guys like out there listening, like, you got to put the work in to get the results. Like, you got to put the reps in. It's just like going to the gym. Like, you're going to go every day and you're going to do a little bit each time, and you put the reps in. And you're so right on the accountability piece of that. That group, I just talked to one of my boys yesterday, Phil, on our Monday meeting about, you know, his mom passed away during that 9 month step study. And he said, he's like, dude, if I didn't have that group during that time, I don't know what would have happened, because it was such a tight knit group and there was a lot of support there. So I'm glad you shared that. And thanks for, for putting that out there too, for other dudes out there who might be interested in CR.
Yeah, exactly. Like I said, AA is great. I love it, but going through the step study with a group of men. And so here's what's crazy is I go through the first step study, I get my relapses, under control, and God called me to sign up for a second step study. He's like, I was like, should I sign up for a second step study? I was right on the edge of it. And then they called and they're like, hey, we need a co-leader for the next step study. Nice. Would you be willing to co-lead? And I'm going, wait, just a few years ago, I was off my rocker again, and you're asking me to lead a step study? Like, what? And so the promises start coming true. So I'm in my second step study. We're about 10 months into it.
Oh, cool.
And we got a meeting tonight that I'll be, co-leading with my buddy. And it is that extra accountability. So if you're a chronic relapser, something's not working, like, you got to put more in. Don't give up. Keep going, guys.
Yeah. I remember hearing God say that, that's like, I just heard it, felt it. And I've always used those 3 words, just show up, because there's so many times, like, when I didn't want to go, or when you don't want to show up somewhere, when you don't, you're not into it. And those are the times, like, when you need to go the most. And so I always use that a lot, like, just show up. God will do the rest. God will work if you allow him to work and open yourself up to it. What would you say to anyone out there who might be on the fence, and whether it's a traditional 12-step, NA, AA, whatever, whether it's CR or something? Do you have any advice or any thoughts on just like what you might be able to tell somebody?
Like somebody that's on the fence of going to a support group?
Just, because that's a big thing, I think, especially for dudes, putting themselves out there, like showing up and like showing face and being like, hey, like, I'm a little bit messed up right now and I need some help. It doesn't, and there's a lot of ego, there's a lot of pride, I think, in that. Yeah. And so how does a dude who's like on the fence about that just get over himself and just go for it?
So if you're in a place where, if you're a man, if you have a family responsibilities, or you're just responsible for yourself or your parents, there's somebody else that's relying on you. Real men step up to the plate and take care of their crap. That's what a real man does. They don't run from it. And so real men hurt, real men cry, real men, like, we have real feelings, but we push them down. Yeah. So I had a buddy call me recently, a few weeks ago, and he was like, man, I don't want to act like I'm complaining to you or anything, but I went through this and this and recently, and I don't know what to think about it. And I was like, dude, you're freaking normal. Like, I'm so proud of you for reaching out and just making a phone call.
Yeah.
Because here's the truth is you're already a part. If you're a listener, you're already a part of support groups right now, whether you know it or not. You know, whether somebody you get your drinking buddies, that's a support group that supports your drinking. If it's the, bowling club, that's a support group that supports your bowling. You know, if you're, part of a gardening club, whatever, we're already a part of support groups, but we look at 12-step support group as like, oh, I'm less than. And I'll tell you what I've learned in 12-step. Here's a little secret is this is like the secret sauce of life. If you can tap into the principles that are taught here, you're going to have a leg up on everybody else out there.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
it's kind of a little secret little kind of society we have, but we do want to share it with others. It's something we want to keep to ourselves. And there's a lot to offer in 12-step recovery work. But if you have that mental block of like, I don't want to go support group, you're already part of a support group. Why not get one that's healthy for you?
Yeah. No, it's great, man. That's so good. And it's such a big part. And you're right. It is a little secret. Like I've always said, after I had started to learn a little bit and go, man, like this is a whole new world out there. There's not like, other than the Bible, there's not like a manual for life. I mean, that would be a manual for life in some sense, but like the day-to-day stuff, we tend to get caught up in sometimes. It's just human nature. And having some tools to work through some of this stuff is so huge, man. So anyways.
So these tools are continuing to benefit me today. So as you and I were talking about before the call, is I'm just starting to put myself back out there in the public speaking world as a public speaker and a life coach. And for me to start putting myself out there on social media several months ago, like so I'm working through my step study group and I'm telling them how terrified I am. I'm like, God, I feel like God's calling me to put myself back out there again, but I'm afraid because I've messed up. The shame, the guilt. What's my, ex-in-laws going to think if I'm putting, more content out there that I'm sober and that I'm sober by the grace of God today. And they're like rolling their eyes. You know what? I had to work through that. And if it was just me, I would still be stuck and I wouldn't be moving. And really being stuck is you're not stuck. You're just fearful. I felt I was stuck, but I was really fearful. So going to my support group, going to my men's step study for several weeks in a row and going, I'm scared to put myself out there, but God's calling me to do it. I don't know if I can do it. And I had a buddy pull me aside and he goes, all right, why don't you get somebody because TikTok like freaked me out. I'm like, I don't want to do TikTok. I'm 45. Like TikTok's like, I'm a little old for it, but they're like, that's what you need to do. I put it off for over a year. Like, I'm not getting on TikTok. So finally my buddy goes, get somebody who knows TikTok, who knows social media, a younger person, a friend of yours, have them come over to your house or call them to help you.
Yeah. So
I literally had to have my buddy Parker come to my house, help me film my first several videos on this couch where I'm sitting and him like post it for me because I was terrified. Yeah. I'm like, here we go. And what if I relapse again? You know what? If I relapse again, I relapse again. And that's okay. Yeah. But I'm doing what I need to do today to stay sober. I may relapse 6 months from now, I may relapse tomorrow, but I'm doing today what God's calling me to do. And that's, I think, the best I could be doing, right?
I love it, man. Like staying in the moment. We got today. That's like the cliche thing. I know it's a little cliche, but it's so true. It is. And, I think that to your point of, I know I've struggled with that. You've struggled with, you said, I think a lot of other dudes struggle with that too. Like the thought of what are they going to think? And it's usually our closest people to us, our family, like our really close friends. And like, I could really give two craps, like what most other people that I don't know, I'm like, whatever, but the ones closest to me is the hardest sometimes, to what are they going to think? What are they going to say? Well, they really know the ins and the outs of everything. And now I'm trying. So it's almost like that imposter syndrome, actually, now that I think about it, it kind of creeps in and you're like, so how, I don't know if that, like, how does that kind of describe it a little bit in some sense?
Absolutely. And that's where I found support outside my family because my family loves me, but they don't get recovery. They don't get the principles. They don't get the steps. Yeah. So when I would go to my, closer like family members and, let's say my mom friends, she's like, well, why are you going to do that? Why are you going to try to accomplish that? I'm like, well, Mom, I mean, that's what I'm being called to do. But she doesn't understand. So that's where I need to find that account. That's where I need to find other support people who are going to support me from where I'm at to where I want to go. And a lot of times it's not our family members, but yet we think we need to, our family needs, family's everything. It's like, you know what? Yes, it is in some sense, but in other senses, like I need support from people outside my family. And that's okay too.
Yeah, totally.
kind of drawing a boundary of like, all right, this is what my family's for. I'm going to go to them for these things, but outside, in recovery world, I need to go to other people who get me.
Yeah. You get an outside perspective. And you're also getting folks who you can relate to because they've been through similar experiences. And so I think what it does is we talked about this in our meeting yesterday. You have a sense that you're not alone. Like you hear, like you actually mentioned it, a dude, in a group setting, you're having dudes sharing like their heart, like their most personal stuff. Like, man, I can't even, like some of the crap that I heard in the STEP study about like stuff that had happened to these grown men, or things they did or whatever. I was like, whoa, like it's crazy. And so it sets the tone though. And it goes, okay, well, if this guy's sharing this, just like you said, okay, I'm going to get this out too. And once we get it out, we can help start healing from it too. So that's so good. So I want to honor time today. I know we're a little short on it. We got about 8-9 minutes. And there was 3 points that I thought maybe we could hit on, just kind of based on some of the notes that you wrote down too. The root causes of anxiety and depression, relapse after success in sobriety, which we've hit on a little bit too. And then I love this one the best, like God's grace in overcoming addiction. So let's kind of hit on those 3 real quick, but let's start with the top one. Like, in your experience, dealing with anxiety, depression, trauma, what are your thoughts of that? What are some of those root causes and how can someone take a look at those if they're struggling with it?
Yeah. So my platform right now online, if you look me up on any social media, it's John Mabry Connects. And so the connection piece is really what my message is about. And the root cause of most anxiety, depression, addiction issues can be led back to disconnection in one form or another. And I'll spare you all the details, but that's just kind of a broad overview. Repeat the question again.
So just, I think there's like, even people drinking because they have social anxiety, right? Or they're drinking because they have depression, but they're caught in this cycle because we all know that alcohol makes you depressed in the long run too. So
here's the solution is anxiety and depression, in my experience, is not a life sentence. And I thought it was. I thought, I've been diagnosed with anxiety and depression. I need to have this forever. And it was like a little pet I would carry around. Like, here's my anxiety, here's my depression, here's my substance use disorder. And I would just lug these things around with me. If you're struggling with them, they're not a life sentence. And the book I would recommend for people is Johann Hari's book, Lost Connections. And it's an amazing book. And he talks about the 9 scientifically proven reasons for anxiety and depression. And how to overcome those. And only 2 of them are biological. The other 7 you can do on your own. One of them is be out in nature. One of them is having meaningful work. If you're in a job that's not meaningful for you, you're more likely to be anxious and depressed. Antidepressants, right? You can use medications. They use this example in Cambodia. They took some antidepressants to Cambodia in the early 2000s. And they were like, oh, no, we already have antidepressants here. And they're like, what are you talking about? They're like, well, this guy got his leg blown off in the rice fields. And he was terrified to go back in the rice fields and work because of more explosions. So he was just depressed. He laid around all day. So the community got together and they bought him a cow. And the cow was the antidepressant. So they got him a cow so that he could become a dairy farmer. And now he can make money while being off his leg and not being in the rice field where he's terrified and PTSD. Yeah. So they said, we already have antidepressants. Like, we just work with people in their life situation and find out what's not working. And we plug something else in that does work. And so you may see your anxiety and depression as the problem, or that you're the problem with it, but you're also the solution. Yeah. And you can get out of it when you go start getting into a support group, going to a therapist, things like that we're talking about, to go get the help that you need. Yeah. So.
Yeah, that's great, man. I know how many dudes out there they hate, like you said, the job thing. Like, you hate your job. It's just tough to, like, that's a tough thing. Yeah. Yeah.
And so if you need to make a change, and that's where you can get support to go make that change. Yeah. Your family may not support you because of the financial reasons or whatever, but you can go get outside support to go, here's what I'm hearing. And you really could maybe ask for, a different situation at work. Maybe it's not leaving the job. Maybe you need to ask your boss, and you need the confidence to ask the boss for what you need. Yeah. Maybe it's not just leave, but maybe you need some changes and you need confidence to help ask for those changes, and support can help you get that.
Yeah. And I'll say too, guys, like, all this comes in time and work and patience. So it doesn't happen overnight. Yeah. It's like, oh, it didn't happen in 2 weeks, I quit, screw this, like, no, you got to ride it out and just show up. It's the same thing, So let's go on to the next one. Relapse after success in sobriety, man. I know obviously you've experienced that firsthand. What are your thoughts on it? What could you say to anyone out there who's had similar experience?
Just keep going, guys. It's like this you hear it all the time since you were a kid. Don't give up. Don't give up.
Yeah.
And I hear it from like Michael Jordan and these like, world leaders that I like look up to, and they're like, just don't give up. And now here I am like having to go, oh, this is what they're talking about. When crap gets really bad and my kids and the court takes my children away. I mean, I was completely isolated. Everything was gone and I had to start all over. That it's, guys, it's, I lost my train of thought there. I'm gonna be honest with you.
No, that's okay.
I started thinking about my kids.
I know I could tell.
And maybe that leads into the next one. The grace of God is, I'll tell you what. So I'll come on and I'll get all excited about, hey, here's what I did in the past. I've been to Hollywood and I've done all this stuff. You know what I'm most proud of is the work I've done the last few years to get time with my kids back. Yeah. That is the most meaningful work in these 2-step studies that are almost 2 years of my life in these step study programs. And I went from the court, I had to have 4 hours a week supervised with my kids, to now I get them week on, week off for the summer. And during the school year, I get them every other weekend. And then for this summer, last week, I got them for a full week, 7 days. And that is the most meaningful thing in my entire life, is working the program to get out of my crap, to get time back with my kids. Yeah. That's something I want put in a magazine. That's what I want people to hear, is that if you keep working it, don't give up. By the grace of God in this program, it's a spiritual program, God can save you and restore your life. And that's what he's doing to me now. And I'm grateful to be a part of the process because I showed up.
Amen to that, man. That's so good to hear. And just showing up, doing the work. I think in my experience too, like when we do that, God works, and it doesn't always work out exactly like I expected it to or whatever, but it always has worked out in some way. And I want to share this with you, man, real quick. And then we'll wrap up today. I don't know. Do you ever hear or listen to Pastor Judah Smith?
I don't know.
I really love his communication style and his just his word. And he was sharing some in what I was listening to a podcast, and he was talking about when he was a kid, and his father was a pastor as well, I believe. And when he got in trouble as a kid, his dad was pretty hard on him, right? And I think he even got spanked, or he got in trouble, and his dad let him know it, and he was in it. But he said the one thing that when he messed up, after he had that discipline, brought down, and he kind of experienced that, his dad let it go after that day. He never held it over him. It wasn't like 2 days later or 3 days later or even a month later, like, well, remember when you did this or you did that, and that's why this. And it's such a great example, because he went on to compare that with God and God's grace on us as people, as human beings. And God doesn't hold over the things that we do and that we've done in our past. He doesn't hold it over our heads. We're forgiven for that when we surrender and try to walk in this new light. And so I'm sure there's someone else out there listening who, hopefully they can hear that and go, man, that's a little bit different perspective on it, because God loves you, man, like straight up. And he loves John, and he loves me, and he loves all you out there listening. Yes. And that's, ultimately at the end of the day, that's all that really matters, man. So
he's calling for you. Yeah. If you have a pull on your heart today, today's maybe the day to take action. Reach out to Shane, reach out to myself, reach out to Celebrate Recovery or a AA 12-step group. If God's pulling at your heart to get some support today, don't let this opportunity pass you by, guys.
Yeah. So I know, let's keep in touch. I'd love to do this again. Sometime later on down the road, reconnect and maybe get a little bit more time with you. Where can folks reach out to you? Where can they find you? And we'll be sure to put all the links so they're very easy to find in the show notes.
Yeah. Just look up John Mabry Connects, on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube,
TikTok,
all the stuff, TikTok. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So awesome. John Mabry Connects.
Awesome, man. John, thanks so much, man. It's great to have you on the podcast today, man. I appreciate you.
Honored to be here. Thanks for doing what you do.
Share the podcast with a friend. Connect with us on Instagram at That Sober Guy Podcast. Love you guys. Thanks so much for tuning in. I hope you heard something that helps you today. Peace, love, and respect. Keep your blood clean.